So I can play a little bit on my own, but I was a band nerd in high school, but it never really went past that. I kind of taught myself to
Yeah.
play guitar and stuff, and like I think in middle school is when I kind of taught myself guitar, but I
Mm-hmm.
can play most of your basic chords and start on some bar chords, but that's about it. I
Yeah.
can kind of pick rhythm if I have to, and nobody's paying too close attention. But uh,
Yeah.
I've always had a reputation for being like the LimeWire Napster king of just finding obscure. At the time, Red Dirt was pretty obscure outside of Texas and Oklahoma, and I feel like
Yeah.
I
Right.
introduced most
Right.
of Fort Collins to Red Dirt music when I was in school there. So that was
Cool.
I
Yeah.
love sharing good music. So I was glad you
Yeah.
followed me, and I went and scanned your catalog on Spotify, and I like it. Like how long you been
Thanks.
playing?
I've been playing for about, I mean, just picking a guitar. I've been playing for about 13 years now, something
Okay.
like that. But but playing more professionally. So I moved to Boise, Idaho, a little over 2 years ago to get a master's degree, and so I went to Boise State there to get my master's in business administration, and
Okay.
um, that's when I was like, all right, I'm going to do school, and on the side, like I'm going to do music, and I'm going to try to do this, like try to make something happen with it. And so that's when I got more serious about it. So, but yeah, playing around, writing songs probably for, probably 3 years now. Writing songs for a long time, but just trying to do it in a disciplined fashion for about 3 years now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you went to
Yeah.
the school for the ultimate underdog story. I mean, if Boise State's always the
Yeah.
underdogs somehow, and they always win somehow.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll bleed
Yeah,
over
I know.
to
It's
the
kind of
music
amazing.
career.
Right.
But
Yeah. So are you still in northern Colorado?
no, I'm in Western Nevada right now. I grew up in
Okay.
Southeast Colorado, down by the Oklahoma line, and then I went to school up in Fort Collins. I was in Kansas for quite a while, and just right on
Yeah.
the Colorado line, and then I've been out here. It'll be 4 years this spring in Nevada. So
Okay.
um,
Cool.
it's kind of a music, like an independent music desert out here. There's not a lot going on. I do miss, as much as I
Yeah.
don't really miss Fort Collins, I do miss the Aggie Theater and the swing station
Mm.
and little shows like that.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Well, I think a few of the Boise bands would go down to Elko every now and then, so I would kind of hear about it,
Yeah,
kind of through the grapevine whenever I was up there. Yeah.
yeah. We went last year for the first time, and I was just dang impressed with that whole deal they put on there. It's really neat how they bring that all together, and there's a lot of talent there in
Hmm.
one spot. And I think that first day
Yeah.
we were there, we opened at seeing Ned Ledoux, went straight from there to see Dave Stamey, and then we went to
Yeah.
see who else did we see? We saw like three or four, fairly big names in the kind of the cowboy music scene, all within one day, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. What a blast, man! That sounds so cool.
I know
Yeah.
it's a shame
Sounds
they're
great.
only
Well,
doing virtual this year, but it's
yeah. Yeah.
I can't wait till this stuff opens back up. We can get back to like actual live shows again. That'll be
Hmm.
the day.
I know. Yeah, I miss it, man. I miss it so much. Just go. I mean, even playing, but also just going. And just being able to participate, and just some of the bands from Texas were getting up towards Idaho, and they were coming through Colorado, which is where I'm at now, and um, it's just a bummer to miss out on some of those guys and be like, oh, that was booked, and now we just the cancellations just they just wear on you after a while.
Oh, I know it,
you
man.
know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, especially when you're like just kind of getting into it seriously. Then it's like, boom, everything's just
Yeah.
comes to a screeching halt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very true.
I
Yeah. So tell me about, how'd you discover Red Dirt music, living out in Nevada and Fort Collins and all that?
Well, I like I said, I grew up right down by Oklahoma, and the Great
Right.
Divide is what started it all out for me and my buddies in high school.
Yeah.
So I grew up about an hour from Oklahoma Panhandle State University, which is might be one of the biggest party colleges ever. Even though it's
Yeah.
it's only a couple thousand students at the most. I mean, it's pretty tiny school, but it's the rodeo school to go to. I mean, they're well known. The Bowers are very established in the Goodwill community, Goodwill Guyman area. So they do a good job of recruiting good rodeo talent. But that's that's about all it's known for
Oh,
besides
sure.
just rodeo and drinking beer. But Great
Yep.
Divide. So Mike McClure and the boys would go down to Guyman and play Pioneer Days, and that's how we got introduced
Yeah.
to them. And so you can't go very far from Mike McClure without hitting Cody Canada and Cross Canadian Ragweed, and
Right.
from there Boland, Reckless Kelly, all the just it's like jumping off
Yeah.
the deep end then. And I've never
Yep.
looked back and
Possibilities are endless.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and then like right as so I went to college in '04, and so that was like right when like Napster had been shut down already, but LimeWire was at the top of the game. So LimeWire and Hastings bookstores was the best place to find
Yeah.
Red Dirt music, and you could find
Yeah.
if you couldn't find it on LimeWire, you had to go to Hastings. That was who had the good selection.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Now that you say that, I didn't realize Hastings had such ties to Red Dirt, but I went to Texas A&M, and I remember one time there was an acoustic Randy Rogers concert inside of like the Hastings that was there at in College Station, and I just remember thinking it was the most random thing ever. Like, why in the world would this be happening? But I guess maybe there was some deeper thing there than I
Yeah,
realized.
I
So
don't know
that's cool.
what the reasoning was behind it, but like you could go into like a Sam Goody in the mall, and you might find a Ragweed CD or two, but and maybe
Yeah.
like you could find Pat Green, but that there wasn't much more than that. And Hastings had
Yeah.
I mean, you could pick up like Brandon Jenkins, right, and just like obscure Red Dirt guys, and they had like every
Uh-huh.
album of them. It
Right.
was it was wild for whatever reason. I don't know why
Yeah.
Hastings was that big, but that was the go to for it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't really realize that. That's cool.
Yeah. So where did you
That's
grow
cool.
up?
Yeah, I grew up in San Angelo, Texas, kind of West Central,
Okay, as I
and
say, you had a little
grew
bit
up.
of a twang, but I couldn't tell if it was West Texas or Okie.
Yeah, 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 West Central Texas, and grew up on a little kind of farm out there. We had like kind of a hobby farm, and the first 15 or so years of my life, it was like I don't know what you call it. It was like a processing plant. So basically, we had a cattle partner in Georgia who would send us cows by the truckload, and we would
Oh, okay.
tip their horns and put some weight on them, and give them all their vaccinations and stuff, and then we would send them on to the feedlot. So that was kind of my growing up experience, was a lot of that, and then did team roping all through high school, and kind of never did rodeo circuit, but kind of was just do local kind of
Jackpot type deal.
roping stuff. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, so did that all through high school, and then went to Texas A&M and started trying to play guitar every now and then. So that's about
So when
it.
when did
But
you
yeah,
go to A&M?
I was at A&M 2009. So
Okay.
2009 to 2013 is when I was there. Yeah.
So were they in the SEC at that point, or are they still Big 12?
So it was right in the middle of the transition.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So I was there. Yeah, I think my freshman sophomore year was Big 12, and then I think junior senior year was first years in the SEC. So
Okay.
yeah, there was that stuff going on, and then that's when Johnny Football was there and won the
Oh, that's
Heisman.
right.
Yeah, that was my
Johnny
senior year,
Football.
and yeah, it was nuts. I mean, nobody saw that kid coming, right?
No,
Like
like all of a sudden you hear like,
nobody.
"Hey, there's this kid down at A&M that is just playing his dick off," and then
Yeah,
well, then it turns out he was doing everything else with his dick too, and
yeah, basically.
he was a mess, and then
Yeah,
but he was a fascinating story. Like he was like the guy version of the tabloid. Like you don't really want to follow it,
yeah.
but you kind of want to know what's going on in the in the Manziel saga, because well he
Yeah,
was
I mean, it was like the train wreck in slow motion thing, right? So you just can't look
yeah.
away, right?
Well, he was like
Yeah.
already a rich kid, and so already pretty
Hmm.
entitled, and then he just happened to be really damn good at football there for a minute, and
Yeah.
yeah, on top of all that, and then next thing you know, he's like partying with Drake and shit, and he just like
Yeah.
off the rails.
Yeah. Like, man, like, where did that come from in terms of winning a Heisman? And then where did that come from in terms of where he went from there? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, totally off the rails. This is nuts.
yeah, and
Yeah.
he just wasn't really cut out to be an NFL quarterback anyway. He's too small and
Right.
mobile, but then like he had none of the discipline either, and it was a good thing
Right.
he fizzled out, or he was probably gonna get hurt really bad.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. Seemed a little more interested in like trying to be a rock star than
Hmm.
trying to be a football player.
Boy, he accomplished it there for a minute though.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was
He
on
took
top of the
advantage of the
world.
fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, man.
San Angelo, I just finished a book that took place down by San Angelo called the Time It Never Rained. I'm
Yeah, okay. So you referenced that in one of your
yeah.
other podcasts I just was listening to. And I was like, oh yeah, Elmer Kelton, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up reading him.
I just kind of got into his books, but man, he is. I like him. I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read all of them now. But I knew quite a little bit about that drought just because it hit my where my dad grew up too. So,
Yeah.
and he's always talked about the dust storms and stuff there through the 50s, and it was every bit as bad as the 30s. And
Yeah.
then even in the 2010s there in that same area, West
Yep.
Texas, all the way up through Kansas, Colorado, Nebraska. Boy, that was
Hmm.
statistically, I guess it was drier than the Dust Bowl, but we just had a little more cover crop than we did back then, so it didn't blow quite
Right.
as bad. But poof, that was
Yeah.
that was a rough patch.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's just fascinating, like that area of the world just kind of goes through those droughts like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's not, I mean, it's not regular. Like, I guess if it was regular, it wouldn't be a drought, but it does happen like pretty frequently. And yeah, but I grew up reading Elmer Kelton, and that part of the world and the things he would write about was a lot of it was just in my backyard. And so as a
Yeah,
young teenager growing up and dreaming about playing football and being a cowboy, it was just awesome to have some imagery kind of put to all that stuff. So
yeah.
yeah, I love his books for
See,
sure.
I grew up on. See, my dad actually went to college with John R. Erickson, who wrote Hank the Cowdog, and
Yeah, huh?
so I
Up
grew
in the
up on.
Panhandle, right?
Yeah, I grew up.
Yeah.
I grew up on Hank the Cowdog, and then I read some of John Erickson's other books, and they were nonfiction. But yeah, it's really neat getting to have a fairly known author kind of right there in your backyard, like
Yeah.
you said, and it was pretty cool. And all those old stories, you don't ever hear them except if you grew up in that part of the world, or you read somebody like Elmer Kelton, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's pretty neat. I
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
San Angelo, that's kind of down there in the Texas music capital of the world. That area, isn't it? San Marcos and San Angelo and uh,
Yeah.
New
Austin and all
Braunfels.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, San Angelo is a little farther to the northwest. So San Angelo is like an hour and a half east of Midland, 3 hours south of Lubbock.
Mm-hmm.
So I always kind of tell people like we're not the desert, but you could kind of see it from there. Like it's right on the edge of all that.
You're not like
Um,
not quite hill country, not quite desert.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's kind of that right in that in between area. Uh, Yeah, like I don't know. I didn't really grow up with a lot of live music around. My mom was a musician, but then going to Texas A&M, Texas A&M was where it really just kind of came alive. Like there were two or three country dance halls in town, and
Mm-hmm.
there were quite a few bars that were doing open mic nights, and you would have all of these red dirt and Texas country guys coming to town 2 or 3 nights a week, and it'd be on the radio all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like for a while, I didn't even realize there was a difference between like pop, Nashville country versus Texas country, because Texas country was just on the radio all the time. And so it was just an awesome place to be for a few years. Like I really had no idea that it was that unique because it was so prevalent.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
like
sure.
our radio growing up, we of course being out in the middle of nowhere, we could pick up any church channel ever. You know,
Yeah.
ev-
Like sermons
somewhere.
on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
really really depressing hymns the rest of the week. And so anywhere from like 88 or 88.1 to like 91.5, somewhere in there, there'd be at least two church channels that you could pick up. And then you
Yeah.
could pick up KLMR, the giant of the high plains, for all your classic country and hilarious small town agricultural commentary.
Really?
Uh, that station you could pick up from just about anywhere, but that was 9:20 a.m. And then
Hmm.
every once in a while you could pick up a rock station out of Guyman, or and there was a pretty decent country station down there, but we learned real quick like old country versus radio country, because
Yeah. Sure.
any FM station that played country down there, it was all just garbage. Even even
Yeah.
back then, it was
Yeah.
garbage, and it just it's got
Uh,
worse as the years
yeah.
gone by.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the early 2000s, 90s country and early 2000s wasn't even that bad, but as soon as bro country came on the scene, like
Mm,
it just was downhill slide in a hurry. Like, I hate that crap.
I think like the final straw for me was it was a summer before my senior year. And so that was the year that we invaded Afghanistan, or not Afghanistan, but
Yeah.
Iraq. So there was that
Hmm.
news, and Beer for My Horses was all that was on the
Yeah.
radio. And I was on a hay crew
Yeah.
that summer, and I swear at one point, and this was over in Kansas, so there's quite a few radio stations to choose from. But Whiskey for My Men and Beer for My Horses was on all four country stations at the same exact time. And I got so
Oh
damn
my
pissed off that
gosh.
I turned it to the Mexican station and I listened to that for like 3 hours. I had no idea what I was listening to, but it wasn't that stupid fucking song.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like the country top, it just burns songs out so quickly.
Oh,
Even songs that do have some soul to them. Yeah, it's just like that. You hear it way too many freaking times.
well, like early
Yeah,
Zach
you get
Brown
sick of
stuff
it.
when he was still putting out some pretty quality stuff. I mean, they just
Yeah,
played it and played it and played it where, like, they just
yeah,
forced you to hate it at some point, and you're just like, I
right.
really like this song, and I'd appreciate you not ruining it if you could do that for me, but oh no.
Yeah.
And then it
Yep.
wasn't
Yeah.
just the radio; is you'd go to the bar and every middle aged Karen would put Zach Brown on the jukebox, and you're just like,
Yeah.
how many
Right.
times in a row can you listen to this song? and
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. I hear you. Yeah, I feel that way. As a performer, I feel that way because sometimes you just have to play songs that people like, right? If you're up
Wagon
there
wheel.
playing a bunch of songs that's it. Yeah, that's it. I was just what I was gonna say. It's just like it just gets to the point where it's like, all right, this is like the 5th time I'm gonna play this song, and I just got to do anything to make it interesting, like
Yeah.
as a person performing it, right? But I know that if you play it, people will start to move their hips and their
Mm.
shoulders, and they'll start to tap their fingers, and it's just like this. It's like the poison you have to slowly drink in
Yeah,
some
and
ways.
then eventually they'll get moving, and you can slip one of your songs in, and they're like, "Hey, I like this too."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Yep.
yeah, that's the bad part about being a up and comer is you gotta play somebody else's shit so they'll listen to yours, and
Yeah.
but
Yeah. You got to pay some dues a little bit.
it's a weird time to be alive in the music industry too because there's never been an easier way to get your stuff out to a bunch of people real quickly, but it's also never been harder to keep somebody's attention. Like you gotta bring the
Yeah.
heat if you're like anybody can find you, but not
Right.
everybody's gonna come back, and
Yeah.
that's a harder part of it. But it's
Yeah.
cool though
It's
is
true.
when you get people that if you get something that sticks, like people tell people, and then it's a slow build, but eventually, if you're putting out
Yeah.
good content, there people will find it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've thought about that a lot, and I think that um, I don't know. I do think that it just goes to like when you really have the ability to find almost anybody, it just kind of gets to, all right, how do you get in front of the people that do like your stuff, and then how do you it's almost like a lifestyle brand thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like these artists, it's not as much about just getting one song anymore as being someone that looks like the person that everyone wants to be, I guess, which is the
Oh,
rock star kind of mentality, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, and
It's super
apparently
weird.
everybody wants to be some douchebag in skinny jeans and a crumpled up
Yeah.
palm leaf.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
sings about
Right.
a truck and a bonfire.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
that.
I
Apparently, that's what everybody wants
yeah.
to be. But man,
Yeah.
like I'm sure Luke Bryan just cries himself to sleep in a pile of money every night. But at some point, do
Yeah.
you think he hears all the
Right.
noise coming from like actual country folk that are like, "Hey, you're a jackass. And nobody likes you," or
Yeah. I
he
don't
just I'm
know.
sure he can't hear that over the the moans of little 18-year-old women and giant piles of money. So
Yeah. For real. Yeah, I don't know. I've thought about that before. I've listened to a couple other podcasts where they talk about like Luke Bryan or Sam Hunt, and just some of the stuff that those guys are making. And there's a podcast or a blog that covers this stuff called Whiskey Riff. Have you ever heard of
yeah,
them? Yeah, and they're like they try to be pretty true to like what country is and what makes it and stuff. But in their opinion, those guys don't like to even make that stuff. It's just that they did it and they were successful at it, and so that's
mm,
what they feel like they have to keep doing. But
it's like
I don't know.
McLovin. He might be a really good actor, but he'll never be anything but McLovin.
Yeah, right. That's very true. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So who are you listening to right now? Who are some of your
Um.
favorite?
Right now, so my Spotify top five. Let's see if I can pull that up. Was number one was I believe was Coulter Wall, and most of that I have to be honest was his new cover of Cowpoke, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. So I have a list
Okay.
on my Spotify of just Cowpoke from different artists. So it's Coulter
Oh
Wall, Dave
yeah,
Stamey, Eddie Arnold. Like
yeah.
um, let me see. Okay, my top songs of 2020. No, that's not what I wanted. But it was it was Coulter Wall, Core Blund, Tyler Childers, Charlie Crockett, and I can't remember. It might have been Dave Stamey.
Okay.
Let's see. Trying to. I've almost got it, I think. Oh, this. They had it. Oh, here we go. Yeah, it was Charlie Crockett, Dave Stamey, Core Blund, Coulter Wall, and Tyler Childers was my top 5. But add a heavy rotation of Boland, heavy rotation of Merle, Waylon, Reckless Kelly. And then I've got a guy that I had on the podcast out of, I think he lives in Kentucky now, but he's from Iowa, and he just kind of plays old-timey music, kind of like Childers' last album where it was mostly fiddle music. But a fellow named Jake Book is really good, and so he has some original songs and he plays a lot of fiddle music, and I think he just classifies himself as old-time music, and so it's a lot of like old English and Irish style, like jig kind of sound. It's good.
Yeah.
And but I like.
I'll have to look him up. That's awesome.
You know, growing up, I was a huge classic rock fan. Still am. Like I'll listen to Creedence and Skynyrd for days on end. But I also, you know, grew up on Chris Ledoux, and But I think I started when I started listening to music. You know, like really getting into music. I was more of a instrumental guy because I played in the band, and then anymore, if it doesn't have a good story, I'll listen, but it's the story that keeps me interested. And you mix that with a good like finger picking riff and
finger licking riff.
Yeah, finger licking riff. I heard there was a guy that used to eat fried chicken before he played, just because it made his fingers
that's
greasy.
Awesome.
I think he played slide guitar.
That's a good idea.
I can't remember who it was, but like every show he'd eat a bucket of KFC, or at least eat some KFC, so his fingers were all slick.
That's awesome. What a good idea, man. Try that.
But yeah, so I've got a big spot in my heart for like folk indie type music, and you know that bleeds over into the cowboy scene because they're just a different type of folk singer, but that's really at the tail end of it. It's all folk music, and that's kind of my bread and butter, I guess. Is is that whether it be more in the punk scene or in the traditional country scene. It's some like those underground types that they're still playing for the music and hoping to make some money, but it's all about the music and the story and coming from San Angelo, I'm sure you're the same for you. Just all the best stories come from the old cowpunchers, the old ranchers, and and there's something about the storytelling aspect of a good song that I really enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of my earliest memories of some of that type of music were growing up. We would vacation in like New Mexico, go to Red River or something like that every now and then. So we would, my parents would always turn on Don Edwards or Michael Martin Murphey, like his cowboy music. Yeah. And so I just have these super early memories of driving through, the desert landscape of New Mexico, kind of when you're first getting up into that, just listening to Michael Martin Murphey on the radio. And then he'd play Red River every now and then. So we get to go see him, and it was just super, super cool stuff. But yeah, I think that's why I've never really put this together, but I think that's why I love Turnpike Troubadours so much too.
Oh man.
Is they were just masters at telling stories, like, yeah. I love that stuff.
I would, if I had to rank songwriters by states, I'm gonna give Okies the number one slot because when you've got Cody
Ooh,
Canada,
that's rough.
Evan
Oh
Felker,
yeah, that's true.
and
Yeah,
Mike McClure, Cody Canada, Jason Boland. I mean, it's a
yeah,
powerhouse. And then you add Bob Childers and
it
Woody Guthrie
is.
on top of that. It's kind of tough to beat.
Yeah, the
I'll
history. Yeah,
I'll give Texas a number 2. I'll give Kentucky number 3, and then I'm gonna give New York because you can't have Jerry Jeff Walker and Ramblin' Jack Elliott without New York. So,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's good points.
and
Jerry Jeff came to Texas. I mean, come on, right? Like I mean, maybe he was from New York, but
well,
you
that's
know,
kind of like Ramblin' Jack. You can't really call him a New Yorker. I mean,
yeah, saying about Lukenbach, right? Like, come on.
yeah. Yeah, so I that's why I'll give New York just an honorary mention, just because they did produce those two.
Yeah,
I wouldn't call them New Yorkers, but I mean they both got the hell out of there. So,
yeah,
but yeah, it's shoot, we lost some good ones this year. You know, between
yeah.
oh yeah, between Jerry Jeff and
John Prine, right?
John Prine, Charlie Pride, Billy Joe.
Billy Joe Shaver.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man, yeah,
yeah,
it's been, and Joe Diffie. You can't forget Joe Diffie.
yeah, yeah. It's true. For all he
Yeah,
was, that's true.
you
Yeah,
lost some. Damn you, COVID. But
yeah,
it's
yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's been. I consider myself pretty fortunate to have grown up in the area I grew up and at the time, because I really got to watch like the Red Dirt Texas music scene like really explode onto the rest of the country. I mean, it really was a very, very regional thing, and you know, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it was everywhere. And I think Turnpike was a big part of that. I mean, they all of a sudden they
Mm-hmm.
were touring everywhere and
Yeah.
selling out, like they were selling out Chicago and New York and places like that. And you're just like,
Yeah.
how do those people in, you know, like I can kind of see Chicago, but like, how does anybody in New
Mm-hmm.
York hear of Turnpike Troubadours? I mean, it's
Yeah.
wild.
Right.
But
That's my thought exactly. Yeah.
so would you give them your top band for your if you had gun to your head, Turnpike your favorite band?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'd say Turnpike's favorite. Yeah, Shane Smith and the Saints. I don't know if you've heard of them,
Oh yeah.
but they're out of Austin, and yeah, they're probably number 2 right now for me. They definitely were the top of my list in terms of like listen to songs this year. Um, and like Robert Earl Keen is
Oh yeah.
probably just one of my favorites of all time. Like probably number 3. I cover several of his songs in sets and stuff, and I just love stuff. Like Feeling Good Again. It's just
I
such a
love
good song.
I love that.
Yeah.
Evan Felker used to play that as encore, and I watched
Oh,
him.
really?
I watched him get heckled in Amarillo one time. They came out and you know, they played their show, just killed it like they always do, and
Mm-hmm.
Evan came back and he's talking, you know, he's tuning up his guitar and starting to pick a little bit, and you know, it's drunk rowdy crowd is the midnight rodeo in Amarillo. It's there's
Yeah.
nothing
Right.
but a drunk rowdy crowd. I think that place is a church now.
Uh-huh.
No joke.
Oh,
I
wow.
think it closed down and a church bought the building.
Yeah.
But
What irony. That's funny.
yeah, and so he gets up there and there's a just drunk asshole in the front. It's like, play some more, play another song, you pussy. And he's like, hey, we're gonna play some more songs. We're gonna play a lot more songs as long as you're not an asshole, because last thing the world
Yeah.
needs is another
Jeez.
asshole. And he gets
Yeah.
up there and he's like 2 verses in and he's like, I forgot the fucking words. Feeling good again. Maybe I am or he's like, maybe I am a pussy.
Yeah.
But I
Awesome.
That's a great song. I love the front porch song, and then
Yeah.
if I had to go favorite Robert Earl song, it's Shades of Grey is probably my favorite. I love that.
Really?
That's such a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. I think probably my favorite album of all time. I don't know if you've heard it, but they did a tribute album to Robert Earl Keen at
Mm-hmm.
Steamboat a few years ago, and I
Hell yeah.
think like yeah, I think that's probably my favorite one ever. Was just because like Robert Earl, his melodies, they're typically pretty fast and a little more
Mm-hmm.
traditional, and in that tribute album, they just like slowed a lot of it down so you could really get into the stories. And I think Cody Canada sung Shades of Grey
I
on
think
that
he
album,
I
and
think he did too,
yeah,
and I think it was either Reckless or Mickey and the Motor Cars did Think It Over one time. And yeah,
yeah,
that was an excellent album.
yeah,
It was some of my favorite artists singing one of my favorite artists. It was pretty damn cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Coming Home to You on that album, I think was one of my favorites ever. So I play that song all the time,
Yeah,
and yeah, I just love those songs. So
yeah.
yeah, man, that's cool.
I love that. Like Robert Earl, just like if you just took the music completely away from it, like the way his delivery is, it's just like he's telling a story, and he has
Yeah,
just enough melody in the songs, but it's like you wouldn't notice it that much if you took the music away from it and you just heard him speaking in that like in that same
mm-hmm.
cadence. It would work
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a story, and uh,
right.
yeah, he's just got a real unique. All everything he does is just there's something unique about it, and
Yeah.
I enjoy
Well, and he's
listening to
just such
him.
a good bullshitter too. Like it's so
Yeah,
fun to listen to him because the front porch song he just has that he has the band keep playing while he just tells the whole story of what
yeah,
they would do and how they wrote that song and growing up with Lyle or being with Lyle Lovett and
yeah.
stuff. And but then a few years later, I heard him sing the front porch song again, and he told like a totally different story. and and it's just this thing where it's like, well, wait, what, like, what's true here? And but that was just the genius of it because I came back a few years later and it was totally different, but it was just as believable. And
Yeah.
both of them were super funny,
Mm,
and yeah, it was awesome. In the second one, he talked about kind of red dirt country, and he just kind of goes on this whole escapade about what is the type of music that we're making. Nobody really knows how to quantify it or put it into a label. And he said he tells his story of being at a hotel in California and thinking about it, and then walking out late one night, and it was like a light from the sky came on, or it might have been something from heaven. He said he looked up and he knew what kind of music they made. It was Best Western music, and it's because they were staying at the Best Western.
that's
And
funny.
it was just just such a good song or a good story
Yeah,
where he just knows how to capture a crowd. So
it was the
awesome.
same way. One of the coolest shows I've ever seen was at Cowboy Poetry, and we watched my buddy Forrest Van Tile from An American Forest, Corb Lund, and Ramlin Jack Elliott, and it was just the three of them acoustic on the stage, and somebody would play a song, they'd tell a story. Next person to play a song, they'd tell a story, and it was just really really neat how they set it up. But Ramblin' Jack, he's called Ramblin' Jack for a reason because you get him started and he just keeps on going. But he
Yeah.
does that song, The South Coast, which is a really powerful, intense song. And then he's telling this story about when he was traveling with Woody Guthrie, and Woody Guthrie was doing a lot of labor union movement or advocacy at the time, and he was
Mm-hmm.
invited to speak to it was like the women's auxiliary of some pipe fitters union or whatever, and he had to speak at this luncheon for the women's auxiliary, and he went out to sing a song, and it was like the women's auxiliary is the finest auxiliary that there ever was, and if there wasn't the women's auxiliary, and they loved it. And,
Yeah.
but and it was only it was in a way that only somebody like Ramblin' Jack could tell, because it was like it was like a 5 or 6 minute build up to get to that point. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just look at somebody like that, and he's like the real life Forrest Gump. Like, he's just always around for some significant historical event. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
he,
Right.
he toured around with Woody Guthrie, and then he moved on and like toured around with Bob Dylan and the band. And then the
Mm.
next thing you know,
Wow.
he's like with Willie and Waylon, and he just like he's also kind of like got a Bill Murray characteristic, where he's just all of a sudden there's Ramblin' Jack. Like, people got stories about meeting him at the bar, and he's like, "Hey, show me your boobies." And there's like, is that Ramblin' Jack Elliott?
Yeah. Right. What?
And he's like a myth. And but there, man, there's so many cool guys like that through history that they never really make the mainstream, but they become like a little cult legend
Yeah.
of their own. And
Yeah.
those are usually a if Hank Williams Sr. hadn't have been like the father of country music, he would have been another one of those little folk legends. He still kind of is. He's widely
Yeah.
renowned,
Right.
but like outside of the country music scene, like you're just like, oh, Hank Williams, he was like that crazy drunk country singer. But there's like this whole he's like country royalty, but there's still like this like mythical allure to him. And he's just one of those, well, kind of
Yeah.
guys that
Yeah.
died too young, whether it been him or Hendrix or any of those guys. It's just
Mm-hmm.
those are always
Right.
like a mysticism about them, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Sometimes the myth is greater than the man, right? But it's part of what it's all about, I guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I just watched a I don't know what you call it. It's a movie, but it's a biopic, I guess, maybe, about a guy named Blaze Foley. Have you heard about this on Netflix?
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
What's it
Worth
about?
watching if you get the chance. It's this guy named Blaze Foley, and he's a songwriter I don't know where he's lived, but he moved to Texas, moved to Austin, and got connected to a couple bigger name guys there, Towns Van Zant,
Okay.
and some of that whole crew. And so I guess I don't know if he wrote several songs for Towns or just kind of lived with him, kind of when Towns Van Zant was getting bigger. But it just kind of captures. He was kind of a drunk as well, and kind of
Yeah.
had kind of a big temper. But it just captures how some of the how he lived some of these stories, and how the road kind of plays into that. And it's the same thing where it ties into becoming this mythical figure almost
Yeah.
of
Because
kind of who he
Towns
was.
Van Zandt is
Yeah.
definitely one of those mythical legends. I read
Yes.
I read one of his autobiographies, and or I guess it was a biography. But yeah, the guy was just a brilliant songwriter. One of the better like
Mhm.
finger picking guitarists, at the time.
Yeah.
And but he is also a little bit crazy, and his parents knew it, and they like sent him, and like he had a bunch of electroshock therapy, and like some of those like early like brutal he was in a
Yeah.
nut house for a
Crazy
while,
treatments.
and that
Yeah.
obviously didn't help him any either. But yeah, he's
Right.
but Snowin' on Raton is one of my all-time favorite songs, and that's old Towns Van Zandt
Oh
song.
yeah.
Robert
Yeah.
Earl does it pretty good justice too. But
Yeah. I think Reckless Kelly covered it as well, didn't
I
they?
think you're
That's right.
right. I think you're right. And
Yeah.
then, well, I saw that you covered Poncho and Lefty, and that's originally a Towns Van Zandt song too. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
who?
mandolin player we had kind of at the time we were recording that, he was a big Towns fan, and I had heard it from Willie Nelson, and so
Mm,
yeah, it just kind of made its way to us at that time, which was super cool.
Hell yeah,
Yeah.
that's another one of my like all time favorite songs. Like if I had to make a list of 10, Poncho and Lefty's going to be on there, and it doesn't matter if it's you know if it's from Towns or Waylon and Willie, but it's it's just it's a classic.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one of those songs. Like there was I remember kind of on that drive to Red River or whatever. It was my first, like, you had those little CD players that were about this big
Mm-hmm.
that you could, play a CD in. And one of my CDs that I had in my book that I would carry around was a Highwaymen album,
Mm.
and that was one of the songs that was on there was Poncho and Lefty, and so I just remember it's just one of those things that's ingrained in that New Mexico landscape for me, and cowboy songs and growing up
No, hell
was
yeah.
that song. So
I
kind of
uh
cool.
I had
Yeah,
that same CD, I'm pretty sure. It was
yeah,
like 7 or 8 songs or something like that, and of course
uh-huh,
they played Highwayman, and then I think it was one song from every one of the Highwaymen in the album, but
yeah,
I had that same. I'm
yeah,
pretty sure I had the exact same album
yeah,
in
yeah,
yeah
because
the
there weren't that
CD
many
book.
songs on it for like in a whole album. Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
I
right.
remember thinking
But I remember that.
I didn't want to know if I wanted to pay full price for it because there was only like 8 songs on it, but I was like, it's the
Uh-huh.
Highwaymen though, so I guess I will.
Yeah, right. It's
Yeah,
so good.
you
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
had to work to listen to good music when you're on road trips. You had to carry a
Hmm.
whole bunch of shit with you. Now it's just a phone.
Yeah. Hmm. Yep. No, it's just a phone. So yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. But,
Well, I
yeah,
guess
man.
kind of wrap it up. Is Turnpike getting back together?
Oh man, that's a question. uh, I don't know. I sure hope so.
I do
Right? It
too.
seems like Evan Felker is becoming his own mythical legend, right? Like
Mm-hmm. He
he
really is.
there's all the talk of like why they broke up in the first place. Um, and then yeah, there's the talk of why they broke up in the first place, and then it's like a while back somebody posted some pictures of him working on a ranch, and things were going fine, and then he released a solo song. So you just kind of wonder, like, man, what's going on? I have no idea, but I
Yeah,
sure hope so.
and then it's 2020, which it kind of all started the downhill
Yeah,
slide when Turnpike broke up. That's what kind of opened Pandora's box. So we've had this
yeah,
running prophecy that as soon as Turnpike gets back together, like the COVID's gonna magically be healed without a crazy vaccine.
yeah,
And in this
yeah,
fantasy world, either Donald Trump is president or Joe Biden's president, and it may be both simultaneously, and nobody's pissed off, but. It won't all matter because Turnpike will
yeah,
be making
right.
music again, and it all will be right with the world. So that's my
Yeah,
theory. I don't know how much science is
that
behind
sounds
it,
awesome.
but I think it can
Yeah,
work. And then
yeah.
we still got a
Well,
couple
man,
weeks
that,
left of 2020, so we'll hold out hope that it happens.
yeah, yeah. Well, if there's a petition going around for them to get back together to save the world, I will sign it.
Oh
So
yeah,
you just let me know where. That sounds
absolutely.
awesome to me.
Well,
Yeah.
where
Well,
can
think.
where can everybody find you? Where can they listen to your music? All that good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. So Westrock Music is our Instagram channel. Westrock is the name of the band, and you can find our. Maybe I should do this in a more logical progression, but our website is westrockband.com. Our Instagram is Westrock Music. Facebook is Westrock Music. So if you type in Westrock, you should be able to come across this eventually. There is a band called Westrock that's based out of New Hampshire and sings classic rock, and that is not us. So look for the buffalo symbol. That's kind of our branding, and you should be able to find us somewhere. But yeah,
Yep.
on Spotify, on Instagram. Love to really appreciate just anybody that you could send our way, or if you'd be willing to check us out.
Absolutely. You got any sort of live music coming up, or is that kind of just under kibosh?
It's kind of on the it's on the kibosh at the moment. We're just kind of hanging out. We're working on a new album, like a full-length album. So I've been writing a whole lot this year, and probably wrote 120 songs over the last 9 months, and so we're paring that down to about 10 or 12 and hoping to put out an album by summertime. So
cool.
That's the plan right now. If things get worse or stay closed down, we're going to put out some live music for everybody to enjoy, or some music on an album for everybody to enjoy. So
hell yeah, that's
awesome.
the
hope. So yeah, stay tuned in, and we'll get some more stuff coming your way. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Let me know when you're getting ready to release. We'll have you back on, and we'll do all that good stuff. So
cool. Thanks.
Awesome. If you'll hang around for just a second, but thanks to everybody else for tuning in. Make sure you go follow August and Westrock on all their social media platforms. Make sure you go follow the page, the website here, Burning Daylight at Move Your Ass, and Move Your Ass. We're Burning Daylight.